Welcome very, very much to Conversations, where we're pleased to welcome to the program William Bill Dudor, who is the Bureau Chief for an incredibly exciting and interesting venture in television programming here called Worldwide Television News. And Bill, welcome very, very much to Conversations.
My pleasure to be here.
Your literature says that Worldwide Television News is the world's largest, most encompassing independent news gathering agency in the world. You've been with them for a year or so. That's a correct assumption? You have bureaus all over the world and so forth?
Yes.
I wonder if maybe you could share with us a little bit the company itself, where it fits in. And we want to put that in terms of overall television and technological development, communications, in terms of communications. But Worldwide Television News, when did it get started and where does it fit in?
Well, we've been around for over 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the easiest way to explain what a television news agency is to use the example of print agencies, such as AP, the Associated Press, or UPI, or Reuters, which newspapers use, and they either run the story as it is or they use it as background material. Well, in television, there is our firm, WTN, which actually used to be called UPITN. The name of the company was changed just a couple of years ago to reflect that UPI is no longer an owner. And we provide natural sound actuality footage to our clients being broadcasters. They, in turn, take that material, they package it, or they run it as is, and they run it for the audience. And in a sense, the gimmick is that the audience thinks that if they're sitting at home watching TV in, whether it's Omaha or it's in South Africa or anywhere in the world, and they think that Joe X, their anchor, was in another country that day, and that their local station did that. When in fact, we covered that. Since we have that economy of scale, we have 1,000 clients worldwide.
Okay.
So we can go around, cover all these things, provide it to that station, and then they in turn turn around the audience and say, this is what happened in India, and this is what happened in Washington, and this is what happened in Moscow today.
Yeah, provided to that individual station of one of, as you say, 1,000 clients that subscribe to your service. That's television stations and or networks around the world.
Right, stations and networks. For instance, in the States, we have a number of clients, among them ABC, which is both an owner and a client, CNN, CBS,
Cable News Network,
right? CBS just came on board. CONUS, INN, several others. We provide the material to them. They in turn will, well, first they have internal feeds to their own affiliates. So they'll take our feed out of London, which has the top stories from the world collected there.
London is the home base for the company. Yeah,
London is our headquarters. And New York is the major bureau outside of London.
Would be. Yeah.
And a CBS will take that material, they'll provide it natural sound to their affiliates, which in turn can use that on a local newscast. So here in New York, a local news anchor at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock doesn't just have to talk about what happened down the block.
No, increasingly they talk about world events,
which is changing what the Rather Show and the Jennings Show and the Brokaw Show looks like, because by the time you get to 7 o'clock, you've seen the world, and you've seen the world because, in a sense, WTN has provided that material.
WTN has been able to provide that. And this is they also have, like say CBS also will have crews, and they will have people around the world, bureaus around the world and so forth. But this is supplemental to that? Which say in the case of CBS, or a large entity, they will have some of these crews, but the things that you supply is supplemental to that which they would be gathered.
I'll take an example. Let's say in Nicaragua, because we assign the Western Hemisphere out of New York, and I'm more familiar with what we're doing here. In Managua, there is a Ortega speech. And we'll go in and we'll go up to the podium and we'll cover the main event. And then we'll give copies of that material to CBS in Managua, ABC in Managua. We might put it on a satellite to Europe. We may feed it then up to New York and on to the Far East. If CBS or ABC happen to also have their own crew there, well, since we're covering the main event, they can go off and do a sidebar. They can, let's say Ortega's talking about a bombing that killed 12 children. While we're covering the speech, they can go off and talk to the mother of the child that was killed. They can do that certain difference. And I think that's where the networks in the U.S. are competing on who can put news in context. I mean, it used to be who was faster to covering a fire. We cover the fire.
That's still an element, right? Yeah, but yeah.
But I think it's now the Jennings show and the Rather show. They're competing on who's smarter, who can take what happened today and put it in a context that makes sense. The human element.
Yeah, and again, you say you provide natural sound, as you say. That would be footage.
We have the raging fire. They have
the voiceover or the commentator,
the injured person in the hospital, or the fact that there's been 12 fires in this factory over 10 years.
And then they have to mix that together into a appealing package, as it would.
Packaging is the name of the game.
Yeah, right.
For the networks, we're in the business of providing them the spot news.
And you have crews all around the world. You have crews and bureaus around the world. Maybe just a brief...
Well, I'd say we have our principal bureaus where we have crews and producers would be going around the world here in New York, Washington,
London,
Salvador, Managua, Rio, Tokyo, Sydney, Hong Kong, Delhi, Jerusalem. We have an enormous bureau. We've been spending quite a bit of money too, covering the West Bank.
I should think, yeah.
And Johannesburg, we have I think 3 crews now deployed there. Rome, Paris, and then we have a whole array of relationships: freelancers, stringers, retainers. There's no country in the world that we can't get coverage out of. My boss, the vice president of news in London, calls us the agency of record.
Yeah.
When we're in every country in Latin America every day of the week. So if a big story hits, actually I don't think any of the American networks have anyone permanently based in South America, yet we're in every country.
Yeah.
So when the presidential palace gets bombed, we're there the day it happens.
Yeah.
The next day, ABC or CBS or someone in Europe might fly in a correspondent, but we're there that day. That correspondent then will go away to the next major event.
Well, it seems you really do cover the world.
But we're there day in, day out. So we set up relationships that, for instance, well, in Beirut, Americans can't operate there. And that's obviously a very big operation for us.
Sure, obviously, yeah, right. You have that, and then you have these things, and then the assignment of the news. You do that on your own. You have clients. Clients ask you to cover something. Do you make decisions on your own what you're going to cover, the Ortega speech or the other speech by somebody else in another part of the country? Who makes the decisions on what coverage is done? Is it at the client?
Our core business is news, and the center of that core consists of a number of contracts. Contracts to all these clients that we have worldwide. And in a sense, they pay us X dollars at the beginning of a year, or pounds or Deutschmarks or whatever. And they say, okay, we want you to provide us with foreign news. That means our London central news desk, in concert with New York and Tokyo and all our stringers around the world, are making decisions. What's a good story? I mean, in the end, I mean, we're journalists.
Yeah, that's the news business.
I mean, they're paying us because they believe that we're good journalists. We know a good story. On the other hand, they'll call up and say, well, are you going to cover this or that?
That's a suggestion.
And we say, well, sometimes we say, no, we're not going to cover that because, especially, let's say if a story has a uniquely American angle to it, and Americans in trouble in Guatemala. Well, all the American clients will call up and say, we want to have that. And sometimes we'll say, yes, we'll cover it. Sometimes we say, well, none of our clients in Europe care about this, no one in the Far East. And we're looking at the whole world.
Yeah, you're really multinational.
And we say, but we won't cover it, but if you want to have it covered, we won't do it as part of our contract service, but we can sell you a crew for a day.
I see.
And we can sell you a producer, a correspondent. We can package it. We call
special.
That's called special shooting.
Or if you have a chance, you might be able to get somebody corporate or something like that, or somebody that isn't in the news or something. You could use that crew time down there if you have the crew available.
That's almost a third. That's true. I mean, we have this contract business. We have this ad hoc specials. And then a wholly different market is the corporate end. We deal with a number of Fortune 500 companies who are looking for this new something called video news releases.
Absolutely, sure. They want to get that because that's the way people are communicating increasingly. You brought some tape along with us, and maybe you got one here. Maybe we can set it up for us. This first one. has to do with a broad general view of the operation of the company or something?
Yeah, this first tape, first I should say it was produced in July of 1986, but I think it's a good overview of what WTN is and what our core news business is all about.
Okay, well maybe we could run that, we'll roll that tape now then, please.
The world of international news, from summitry to tragedy, from pageantry to oddity, an ever-changing challenge for the premier international news service, Worldwide Television News. Using its hundreds of camera crews, WTN spans the globe with daily satellite services. From London to subscribers in Eastern Europe, then from London to New York and on down to Central and South America. And as America goes to bed, more news to Asia. WTN serving over 1,000 broadcasters, cablers and syndicators in more than 100 countries worldwide. Our owners, ABC Sunday. News.
Here's Sam Donaldson.
Britain's ITN. Australia's 9 Network. They combine with us to form the most aggressive commercial news enterprise. The race for today's headline story finds WTN first to bring up-to-the-minute pictures of compelling stories to the screen. Beirut, Lebanon. WTN's 3 resident crews get the first sport coverage, beginning a more than 2-week marathon in 5 countries, delivering the drama and the newsmakers around the world. When the rest of the world leaves Beirut, our staff crews stay on, continuing the coverage of the horror that is Lebanon. Jadusa, South Africa. WTN cameraman Rapitse Moncho takes you into the heart of Black South Africa's unrest. The hard way. Our 3 crews there deliver the stark pictures of racial confrontation that dominates today's news. Auckland, New Zealand. Halfway round the globe, the Greenpeace flagship Rainbow Warrior is sunk in a controversial sabotage mission, which reaches the highest echelons of the French government. WTN is there. Manchester, England, the world's 5th major air disaster in 3 months, and WTN's clients are showing the horrific scenes just hours after the story breaks. But the best news doesn't always have to be bad. Our features cassette service specializes in the wacky, offbeat story so ideally suited to tail-ending your show. For the sports fan, a cassette service giving you the week's top events from around the world. International soccer. The best in Formula One motor racing. The multi-million-dollar spectacle of ocean racing. You name it, it's there. To help understand the global picture, Roving Report, WTN's half-hour analysis of major current news stories and the broader issues. And WTN offers more. Our special shooting department gives you access to WTN crews worldwide. Trying to promote your anchorman for that competitive market edge? Hire a WTN crew and add the luster of international datelines to your broadcast. Need to cover the foreign angle of a local story? Ask WTN's experienced field crews to get it for you. Local dignitaries making news abroad? Assign WTN to cover it for you. Bring the foreign story with the local angle home by satellite with Worldwide Television News. From the international headquarters in London through each of its overseas bureaus and broadcast centres, WTN provides its clients with an impressive array of broadcast services. An Arab voyage of discovery, the explorer, a Saudi prince, first of his people to challenge the frontiers of space. Conceived and produced by WTN Commercial Productions for live transmission to the Muslim world. Sophisticated production, classy documentaries, the best in camera crews, and a broadcast network to match. The multi-role force that is out there for you. WTN, Worldwide Television News.
Yeah, well, that's really incredibly interesting. I mean, you've got people all over the world, and it truly is an international scope. And I was saying to you as we were watching that some of that footage is very hard won. It's a dangerous business. Those producers and camera people are out there very often taking risks in risky news-gathering situations.
Well, I mean, WTN, Worldwide Television News, the company starts with the cameraman.
Yeah.
Our camera people in the field who get up day in, day out, and they
go out and take risks.
Yeah, they risk their lives to get material. Obviously, it's very risky. In fact, we have a situation not just with our cameraman, but a producer, John McCarthy, was taken hostage in Beirut. He was sent out from our London office, and it's risky. But that's part of
the news business. But that's something you have to be considering. And are many of the things that are done hard? You had some things features in there. Some of the things you'd be gathering were a little softer and so forth, even sports and that sort of thing. It's not so risky. Although some of those soccer matches in South America would be pretty risky to attend. But I mean, it's not. You understand what I'm saying?
Right. Well, we have 10-minute daily satellite feeds. I think the map was showing how we have a feed. The first one of the day, and that starts out of London, and it goes out to the East European clients, and it's also picked up in Africa. And actually, there's an exchange within Eastern Europe. All the various television stations get on an exchange every day, 3 times a day, and it's called Intervision. And they share material. The first 10 minutes every day of Intervision is a 10-minute feed from our London headquarters of a wrap of the world news.
I see.
Then there's also a West European exchange called Eurovision, and we supply news to that exchange. Literally every news director for all the government-owned stations in Europe get on a conference call every day and say,
I see, yeah.
Say, what do you have? Oh, I've got this story, I've got that story.
Yeah.
And we're supplying material that way. Then, again, these feeds are 10 minutes and usually has 8 to 9 stories, a minute, minute and a half, natural sound. And then the actual broadcaster takes that material and they repackage it. In New York, we offer material throughout the day to West European stations through Eurovision. We have a daily feed every night to the Far East. I think it showed going out to Japan, Australia.
Yeah.
So these core businesses are based on satellites. And as satellites are expensive, it's the top business, today's news today. The sort of stories that don't have to go on a satellite.
That can be bicycled.
Right, or feature stories, these timeless, the funny ones. You can put a half an hour or an hour together on a cassette service, and you send that out once a week.
Yeah, I was going to say, the company goes back 30 years. That's before the first satellites were even up.
Oh, I know. The satellites only came along 10 years ago.
That's right. Actually,
originally, the original WTN or UPITN was UPI a news film, and they were distributing film to movie theaters, which would have the dun-da-da, and they'd say, this is what was going on.
Time marches on.
But actually, it's one of those great. Everyone was always saying how Vietnam was the television war, but in fact, it was film. And who got to Hong Kong first and could process the film and get it on another plane? It was planes and film.
That's right, and, because that was before the satellites.
Yeah, you didn't see Vietnam until 2 days later.
That's right. So in these day and age, that's an eternity, because everything's going at breakneck speed, and which speeds everything up, makes for a better service, and but it probably makes for a lot of challenge for you, also meeting those kind of deadlines and that sort of thing. You live in a deadline kind of situation, I should think, making all those kind of feeds. Well, it's extremely exciting. We want to talk some more about it, but we want to take a break here if we can now. And remind you, the television audience, it's your pleasure to have the Perceptions of Bill Dudor, Bureau Chief of this incredibly exciting worldwide television news agency. We'll have a break now. We're coming right back, so please do stay tuned. Thank you.
How do you find out when an administration is corrupt? How do you find out when a government is hiding the truth? How do you find out about those who would like you not to find out? To become better informed about the role of a free press and how it protects your rights, contact the First Amendment Center.
Do you have your passport?
For the 3rd time, yes.
Do you have everything? Kids, relax. If we weren't grown-ups, they wouldn't have let us join the Peace Corps.
Peace Corps. It's creating food systems in Africa, building homes in Costa Rica,
and fighting malaria in Asia. It's teaching math and learning French. It's working side by side. It's been tough, but for 25 years, the Peace Corps has been making a difference in the world.
Mom, Dad, I'm so proud of you.
Peace Corps, the toughest job you'll ever love.
Yeah, back again with Bill Dudor, Worldwide Television News, and it's an incredible thing that the technology has advanced so rapidly. It's a very easily said thing, but it's really true. Technology is advancing so quickly. The satellite has remade everything, and I suppose switching and editing, archival recall, computer-assisted kinds of use of information and so forth, all of these things have really fundamentally changed the ability for us to massage and to create packages of news. I suppose the technological advance is something you have to really keep on top of.
Well, there's the technology, and I'm thinking about what you're saying about satellites. There's the technology, there's the costs involved, and there's really the legal hurdles. I think in the last 10 years, quite a bit of change has happened with the first daily satellite. Actually, the first one was from London to Australia.
Really?
Because Australia was sitting out there and floating in the Pacific, and they wanted to know what was going on in London and the Queen Mom and that sort of thing. And that started it. And over time, it got to the point where there were a number of daily fixed feeds, and everyone would join in. So you have 20 clients on a feed. Well, now we've got a situation where one of our owners, the 9 Network, they have a 24-hour transponder from London to Los Angeles in one hop. And then they have another 24-hour transponder from Los Angeles to Sydney. So they can feed from London. And 10 years ago, it was revolutionary that they would have a satellite for 10 minutes a day.
Yes.
Now they have 24 hours a day.
Does that indicate the fact that there is more transponder time, more ability all the time? Was there ever a glut of transponder time?
No, I think some of it has to do with more satellites going up. But there's certainly, especially with the space shuttle problems.
Yeah, that is terrible.
There's not a glut. But within the West, the Intelsat system has begun to feel the pressures of possible competition. Pan Am-Sat. Right now there's only one system in the world called Intelsat, and you have to work through. Our U.S. representative is ComSat.
Yes.
But there may well be competitors out there. And within the U.S., since you don't have to deal with the international system, you can. Well, it was privatized a few years back, and the cost of satellite time just fell drastically overnight. So it really wasn't the technology wasn't there. There were legal hurdles. I mean, once the U.S. government said we're not going to have legal barriers between who can use a satellite and when they can use satellites, we'll open it up to the free market. There was competition, and the cost came way down. And there's technologically, there's no reason why you can't take a domestic satellite in the U.S. and feed to Moscow. It's just that along the way, there's two governments who might say, no, or if you're going to do it, we want to have a lot of money because we want to control it.
Yeah, the technology or our technological advance, going back to Arthur Clarke's ruminations about the future and so forth, has been perhaps an advance of what some of our political institutions have made it possible for us to communicate as effectively on a world scale.
I think some governments are beginning to worry that the technology is getting out ahead of them.
Yeah.
That,
Kenny Schaefer, did you notice Kenny Schaefer here and picked up the Soviet television and got it up top of Columbia? Well, other universities around the country, but he figured out how he could do it, and he just sort of took it.
It's a 6 o'clock program.
Yeah, and they pick up Soviet television right off the satellite and so forth, and there's more and more.
Well, the Inter-Sputnik system has marvelous technology, and actually we work with very closely with East European clients, not only out of London but here in New York, and again it's a question of what the governments want and how they want it to be structured. Here in the West, I would say in the next 5 years, I would think that Pan Am-Sat will come off the ground. And
Pan Am-Sat, sure. I don't know. What's Pan Am-Sat?
Pan Am-Sat it would be a potential competitor to Intelsat.
Yes.
It's actually the signing bodies are Peru and in the U.S., and this would be a separate way of getting a satellite feed. Right now, if you want to feed from the U.S. to Peru, U.S. has to I would have to call ComSat, which is the U.S. body, to Intelsat. They then call the equivalent in Peru, and then they match the system. And there's a lot of overhead going on.
Is that done in the name of making sure technical standards are right and that sort of thing, or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, it all came together in the early 60s.
So like the FCC regulating to make sure there isn't cacophony and that sort of thing, or is that the rationale? Or?
Well, yes and no. I think some of it has. I think after 25 years, it takes on a life of its own.
Yeah.
But I think the rationale is to make sure there's one system and that countries can talk to each other. Even though we have 3 major standards conversions and high definition TVs on the horizon.
Oh boy, that's on the horizon. That's a whole other thing that's coming.
And
you have to get through this whole welter of standards conversions. So you get that down, I suppose you can understand that's pretty well done by the international system. Increasingly, you spoke earlier about countries would be feeding it almost like a conference call to a one program and so forth. But increasingly, I should suspect individual countries, individual affiliates and so forth are going to want tailor-made things so that it becomes more and more narrowcasting to the specific needs of a specific client and or client country or something?
Well, I think
that's the right
it goes in sense to that cost. If satellite time is very expensive, one can do one 10-minute feed from New York to the entire Far East, and you have 20 clients all sharing that cost. But after time, as the prices start coming down, Japan wants the Japanese angle, Australia wants the Australian angle, and we find ourselves, it's a different division within our company. We have the core news, but we're also growing rapidly in handling those special needs. Finnish TV will come to New York, and they want to cover what the Finnish ambassador is doing.
Yes,
well, that's not something
right.
we can sell to someone else, but we can cover that with a producer and a correspondent, and we can feed it out. And they want to have that custom made. I think packaging, especially in the industrialized countries, is really becoming the name of the game.
Yeah, it's sort of like a sense of narrow casting is a term, or narrowly conceived marketing.
Well, I mean, Reagan gives a State of the Union address, and it goes for an hour. He might say a little bit that's just about Japan, and then a little bit that's just a little bit about Italy. Well, the audience sitting in Italy, they really want to hear that bit and not the other one. But
and that's apropos. I mean, that's more the way the human psychology is probably around the world and that sort of thing. I think you have a little clip or something that might.
Yeah, this is about this custom tailoring. It's called our Special Shooting Division, and it's a small bit here that tells you has a couple examples what we've done.
And it'll address this particular question particularly. So okay, well maybe we could run that tape now then, please.
Seoul, Korea. 2 weeks of anti-government protests show no sign of abating. Students and riot police clash under a hail of stones, firebombs, and tear gas. It's at times like this that WTN special shooting crews are in the front line. For news producers of the world, it's a top-of-the-bulletin story, and speed is of the essence. Owned and backed by the resources of ABC in the United States, Britain's ITN, and Australia's Nines network, WTN is uniquely equipped to put a crew on the story for you, with or without your own correspondent.
Graham Turse for News 12 at the Bercy Sports Stadium in Paris.
And with speed in mind, wrap it and bird it home with a minimum of fuss. Special interest for East Germany in the British elections. Reporting on the continuing conflict in strife-torn Lebanon for Norwegian television. A downturn in the money market focuses Finland's attention on the currency exchange. More than 30 years in the news business put WTN in the forefront of film and video news gathering. And through the Special Shooting Division of WTN, it's a wealth of experience available to everyone. Israel, linchpin of any Middle East peace agreement. The hatred and turmoil of Black Africa's melting pot. And to the world's peacemakers. Strategically placed bureaus around the world control a network of experienced crews with the latest equipment. All of them available to news and current affairs broadcasters. After all, WTN's already there.
Yeah, that shows really nicely the fact that increasingly people are going to want something that's special. You use things like Baskin-Robbins or...
Right, we were saying during the break
yeah,
that
right.
I mean, you can't sell chocolate and vanilla ice cream anymore.
Or Henry Ford used to sell the Model T and say any color you want but black. And then as the market becomes more and more sophisticated, as information marketplace is becoming through time and so forth, more and more specially tailored kind of programming, and people get used to that kind of thing and want that kind of a menu.
I think we're seeing that fracturing of the audience, and even within a given country. I think within the U.S., there's a number of regional feeds starting out within the U.S. Southwest U.S. News. Florida has a news exchange of just news about Florida that all over the state they exchange to each other.
Yeah, of course. That's
and it just even within countries it keeps going smaller and smaller and smaller, and then you start seeing on a local newscast. Mayor Koch goes to Nicaragua, and all these local stations follow him.
Of course,
because he's important to those stations. No one else in the U.S. or I couldn't sell that to my European clients, but they want to have that face, the familiar face out there.
Yeah, and that's on a geographic basis in terms of that. But then also as the technology again, satellites and cable and possibly DBS and other kinds of things, programming venues which are narrowcasting in themselves, creates another market distribution system, not to mention the possibility of corporate or even other use of video cassette technologies. It's a proliferation of information and visually oriented television communications that is going almost exponentially now. I mean, the increased use of visual communication. It's hard to remember. I was talking with a friend of mine the other day about how Bessie Smith had been inspired by Ma Rainey, who had been a singer before her, and she had been inspired by singers before her day in the blues, and before her, we have some scratchy records of Ma Rainey, and before that it's gone, to history. Yeah. And now we're beginning to collect it all to where we get the school plays and proms, and it's becoming part of the ambience, probably to the good. Some people argue television's getting in the way of good rational thinking and so forth, but the global village that Marshall McLuhan saw and the view of Arthur Clarke and some of these developments probably is serving to the net increased beneficial understanding of the world by the world citizen. I suppose you would agree with it.
I would,
obviously.
I think that's, for me, WTN is more than a company. There's a spirit involved in putting, having the means for someone from the U.S., a local anchor in Kansas, who wants to go to South Africa and cover a story for his or her local station, well, we can help that happen. And I don't think 10 years ago that person ever got out of that. He was covering the local fires down on the corner, and I think the American audience especially is becoming far more sensitive to foreign news, that there could be, as you'll see this in another video we can perhaps look at, where something could happen in South Africa, and that could affect what you can and can't buy at the supermarket.
That's right.
And I think people are beginning to realize that that next continent is not as far away as it might seem.
It's as Mr. McLuhan said, a global village. It's emerging, or it's increasingly becoming so, and increasingly we're communicating through something other than print-oriented news or feature or information distribution.
But the pictures, I don't think the Ethiopian famine would ever have come to...
Or the Vietnam War.
I mean, it's one picture. Those pictures still can, in a way that no print... Well, again, print, I think, is it's really meant more for the analysis and that other end of it.
Yeah, and that is, we say we're gathering news, we're meeting deadlines, we're doing business, things have to be done, but it is an art form. I mean, it's like filmmaking, and it's documentary making. It's a real art form, and it brings a tremendous focus of human creativity to that process of gathering, packaging, putting that stuff together. It's a real artful process that's involved.
Well,
although I know there's a lot of business things.
Like what the soundtrack is the intellect and the eyes see the art.
Oh, is that the way they see it? Well, I was just thinking in terms of broad sort of philosophic implications of some of these new ways of communicating and gathering information, and educational implications of it in the long term are very great. But, well, I'm sorry, we have to take another little break here right now. And when we come back, maybe we can show that other clip that you do have and talk some more about these implications of this emerging information technology and
Everyone's getting into the act.
Everybody almost is getting into the act and so forth. And we got a leading edge, a representative of a leading edge company who's been a pace setter throughout the history of this exciting emergence of visual information technology. Talking with Bill Dudor of Worldwide Television News. Please stay tuned. We'll be coming right back momentarily.
Haiti, Ethiopia, Laos, Cambodia, El Salvador, Mozambique. Many of the world's wars aren't fought by people who are hungry for power. They're fought by people who are just plain hungry. Hunger causes a world of problems. You can help prevent it. Contact Interfaith Hunger Appeal, Box 1000, FDR Station, New York. Every day, around the world, millions of people go out to eat. They don't go across town. They go across borders. Because leaving their countries is one of the only ways they can keep their families from going hungry. Hunger causes a world of problems. You can help prevent it. Contact Interfaith Hunger Appeal, Box 1000, FDR Station, New York.
Back again with Bill Dudor, then of World Television News, and the implications of this emerging. You were talking before that the whole thing, the techniques of advertising, computer-generated graphics, all kinds of things, news, entertainment, things are becoming very, very much interrelated in a way that, again, is moving almost exponentially in terms of we move into this information environment. Exciting time.
Well, and it's also the different. I was actually thinking as you're talking about this program, we're able to do this program, and the fact that there could be where there were 5 stations in a local market, now there could be up to 30 or 40, and it makes as the price also comes down. So we were talking about this global village. Well, a lot of that's commercially driven. People want to have that. It's not as if it's starry-eyed and let's put together some coverage in Europe, so we want America to see. Well, these American audience want to see that. And I think that has to be underlined, that the people want to see it, and they also want to access it. They want to.
Yeah, that's the thing. That it's part of a thing, and you know, one of the things that's interesting also, it might be worth bringing up, because I know Worldwide Television News has a considerable archive that they can draw up on film, and I suppose video archive,
back to the 1890s.
So that you can goes back to the 1890s, where you have archival footage where you can use this to supplement or to illustrate a storyline or something like that.
I mean, I would
so
say
that editing skill and that recall skill and so forth is part of of skills that are being called into
file
play
material.
Here.
I mean, I think I look at
documentaries.
We have footage here in New York that the same shot might be used as stock footage in a commercial. On the other hand, I was thinking earlier that the series Eyes on the Prize. We have a wealth. We had about 100 employees during the 60s. We had the civil rights struggle on film, and that's accessible. It's a great product. And then also, as we were talking about, is corporations. I think the Procter and Gamble's and the Martin Mariettas of the world are no longer satisfied just talking to audiences through 60-second commercials. They want to put out, instead of putting out print material about what they're doing, they put out a video news release. And now that people have VCRs in their own home, I think we can see a future where you might get a VCR in the mail selling you a product.
Yeah, I know they're doing that in this presidential election. People aren't satisfied with the 30-second bites, so they're sending an hour video cassette, and over half the market is video cassette recorders. So there you have a new development, which is utilizing a whole different form of communications. Some of the older people are pretty much chagrined by the implications of that. They tend to think of television as something that is passive, and they tend to think of it as entertainment, which it has been traditionally. But the educational implications, or the learning process, the encyclopedic learning process.
Well, the VCR gives the audience control. They can watch what they want. They can watch when they want and what length they want. It almost makes television more like a newspaper. You can flip back to the page before, when you didn't have a playback control. You couldn't, if you missed a shot, you couldn't say it again.
The market has been largely driven, the VCR market as well as the commercial television market has been driven or let's say pay cable service, driven by feature films, entertainment, and so forth. But there's a great deal of other kind of materials that would be of a rich educational potentiality that is only just, I wonder, beginning to be realized and finding its way effectively into the marketplace. There's
the high quality products. When you ask someone to pay $40 for a cassette, which you might have paid $2 to see at the local movie theater, well, it's $2. But to pay $40, you're probably going to save that $40 for the Gone with the Winds of today and the documentaries or the something you want to see over and over again. It's a little bit more important as an issue or interest. And also, but it's the whole variety out there. I think just as we get third-class mail now, we'll soon, maybe one day, be getting third-class delivery of VCR cassettes.
So that there'll be increased utilization of these other than print-oriented methods of communication. Not necessarily to say print is not to be... Stephen Jobs has a new computer company that he's coming out with called Next that's going to be learning by computer with interactivity.
Videos, I think, are better...
Bypass some of the print.
I think instruction manuals, when you buy a car, you get this owner's manual. I never could understand them. But a video that tells you how to fix your muffler is a little bit easier because if you miss a part, you can go back and see what they're doing. The instructional use too.
Yeah, some things lend themselves well to it, and of course there's going to be an increased aesthetic, or there's a I don't know, we teach reading, we're very concerned about literacy and so forth. We don't perhaps teach enough in our normal curriculum such things as editing and composition and some of the niceties of an audio-visually oriented system of communication, much less actually taking camera in hand and creating product. People are used to thinking in terms of television or film as a passively received thing, but maybe that's changing. Camcorders are happening, the young people are taking to it, and you understand what I'm saying? And you probably would be interested in where you're going to get professional people to go out and gather some of that professional footage and so forth. It has to come from somewhere, right? But it's changing the way in which information is being massaged and gathered and created.
I agree with what I'm hearing is, and I agree that it's going from being a passive form of entertainment to a tool, and a tool for not only consumers or hobbyists, but for governments and industries.
And education. You know, education in a broad, general sense keeps coming to my mind. You brought another clip for us, right, along that would bring up another aspect of what goes on over at Worldwide. Maybe you could set that one up for us.
Right. This really has to do with our corporate division. What we've talked about and seen up to this point is about our core news business and handling special shoots for news broadcasters. This division, the corporate division, puts out all these new things that are coming out, things like video news releases. Instead of putting out a flyer, you send out a cassette, and you put it up on a satellite and everyone can see it in the U.S. And this tells a little bit about how we do that in our corporate division.
Okay, and this could be a model for other institutions that might be able to be thinking about doing this sort of thing as well.
If you have an event coming up, and you want people to know about it, we could cover it, we could edit it, we could put it up on a domestic satellite, and then we could send out advisories to a very select market that's interested in that and say, we can also explain to people how for maybe $150 you can organize seeing that satellite and having that cassette.
There's also wind in the wind. There's also now that some Japanese and other companies are developing a very small, perhaps home-marketed receiving dish direct from satellite.
Right, for KU band.
Or KU band and advances, so that's going to have a...
So instead of sitting at home turning the dial on your TV, you turn the dial on your satellite dish and you look at 26 satellites with 26 transponders each.
Bring you directly in control with the information that's there. So it's a revolutionary development. Well, let's run the tape now and get a view of what we've put together. What's about 5 minutes or so, is it?
About 5 minutes.
Yeah, okay, fine. Let's roll in that tape now then, please.
The world of international business, fast-moving, fast-changing. A world where information matters, now more than ever before. Not just in the boardroom, but at department level. And on the factory floor as well. A world where business can't be separated from political events.
If this is your world, you already know the importance of good communications. Now WTN brings you a new concept in corporate video, a concept that can help you paint a vivid picture of what's happening in your company now, wherever it's happening.
You might be a major company wanting to explain what you're doing and how you fit into the domestic economy. Or maybe you're setting up a long way from home. Or you're interested in some new equipment that your own people ought to know about. Normally, you'd send a small team to take a look. But just imagine how much more effective the trip would be if you could bring back a video report to show to those of your personnel who need to be informed and involved. Calling in WTN can make that happen quickly and without fuss.
It doesn't matter whether you want to motivate your own personnel or promote your company's image. WTN can provide you with the pictures you want, wherever you want them. And if you're a worldwide company, doesn't it make sense to deal with an organisation that's as international as you are?
WTN Commercial Productions, a long-established division of worldwide television news, can claim a blue-chip pedigree. ITN in Britain, ABC in the United States, and the Nines Network in Australia. Our experience as a worldwide news organization goes back over 30 years. WTN camera crews are stationed in every major news area of the world. Backing them up are special correspondents, documentary crews, and technical experts. Their knowledge and expertise are at your disposal to iron out problems and get the job done. Every day, the main WTN production centers in London and New York send news by satellite to over 1,000 broadcasters, affiliate stations, and cable networks around the globe. No matter where a story is coming from or where it's going to, for us, it's routine. This expertise is available to you to make your corporate video a true reflection of your company's status.
In your business, you know better than anyone the people you have to reach. Employees or clients, shareholders or investors, or those you want to become your clients or shareholders or investors. Whatever the message, WTN can help you get it across to the people who need to know. Take the company's annual report, for example. On paper, it's fine for the experts.
A company newspaper can help, but a corporate video from WTN can really bring your company's activities to life. Whatever the information, we can make it visual, so that statistics become meaningful for a wider audience. And when your company makes international news, WTN can cover the event for fast distribution to all television news outlets. And we can do it anywhere in the world. Sometimes developments on the political scene are so big they affect the kind of business you can do in the region. News pictures in your video can provide a graphic background to the decisions you have to make. Takeovers and share issues often capture headlines these days. WTN can shoot to your requirements to present your case to the shareholder. And that has to have more impact than a page of newsprint. And there's more. To match this worldwide up-to-the-minute coverage, WTN can package your corporate video as your own news program, produced from a professional TV studio and presented by a well-known broadcaster. If you wish, you can have your own people help present the program, just to add the company voice. Or you can put them in the studio to be interviewed. It can be a major production or a simple tying together of reports from the field. The choice is yours.
Whatever the scope of your activities, WTN can provide you with the kind of corporate video you never expected you could get. It can add colour, impact and authority to the message you need to deliver. That's good communications, and that's good business. Good night.
WTN, the new force in corporate video.
Well, okay, now that shows a lot of the dimension of things that normally perhaps people don't think about and so forth. You know, one of the things that occurred to us, you're like, in a very real sense, having a national or a world purview there. Is there any problem in terms of trying to communicate by another country or somebody who might be seen by a governmental authority as being subversive of message or something? You've been able to deal with a lot of different kinds of clients, say, or is there an internationalization of message and ability to exchange message, or are there censorship problems nation to nation and so forth? I mean, outside of marketplace.
I understand the question.
Yeah.
I think it's surprising in that there are so little problems. I think that's because we're in the business of providing the natural sound actuality footage, and then the host broadcaster in a given country edits it any way they want, and then they run a track over it saying what they want to say about it. So we might go out and cover a given event in, say, the West Bank, and we'll give those pictures to our American clients, our Soviet clients, and everyone in between the two. But they're not going to use it in the same way. We're out there. We've got a crew. We've got the coverage, and then they make the decision whether or not they're going to run it at all. And I think in 30 years, again, I'm the American on this program, but we have a large British office. We have every lot of nationalities working for the company. The people I work with span the globe, and you really can't think like an American.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking, in a sense, this is something that allows for something other than just parochial view. It allows for a more cosmopolitan kind of view. It encourages a cosmopolitanism, perhaps among the peoples of the world. The technology itself does. Again, back to that global, village analogy and so forth. And that peoples who might have been thought of as the enemy could be better able to communicate their message to the people who tend to think of them that way. So there could be increased communication between the peoples of the world in a very real sense that might, in a certain sense, sometimes bypass political entities that might stand in the way between people-to-people communication. They just had a space bridge back to that Kim Spencer and some of those people put together. ABC came in on it and so forth. But increased people-to-people communication among peoples of the world away and around some of the institutions that some people feel get in the way of better understanding the people. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I understand what you're saying. Yeah. I agree that I think, as we also were saying during the break, during the opening of the United Nations this past year, we had in correspondence from the Soviet Union. We were handling the Iranian.
Iran, you can't hardly get more.
We had English and Canadians. We had correspondence from every continent, save Antarctica, and they all were interested in getting their editing and getting their feeds out, and they're professional journalists.
Yes, I understand.
And whether the person's from Poland or from Peoria, their news people and the professionals about getting that product out. And I think everyone's too busy.
Yeah, I understand. And you're always meeting those deadlines. You have to meet those deadlines always, and you have to make sure the technology goes, and you have to do it with a professional quality because you're dealing with, in the world, real realities and so forth. Well, just sort of in a sense philosophically thinking about some of the implications of this incredible information explosion, which is being led in a very real sense by satellite-delivered, full-band spectrum television coverage. And it would seem to me worldwide television news is a leading entity on the world scale in terms of helping to drive this exciting informational development here on planet Earth, or this global village planet Earth. And I'd like to congratulate you on the work of the company. Thank you very much for coming in and sharing some of these perceptions with us. It's been a pleasure talking with you. And it's been a pleasure in the television audience for you to have the perceptions in of Bill Dudor, who is the bureau chief for the worldwide television news, I guess the leading independent news gathering agency in the world.
The leading international television news agency.
News agency in the world, in that sense then, the leading international. In this very real sense, you can communicate more effectively with the world through television than perhaps any other agency on the world.
Well, we're already there.
You're already there.
We're already there in every country already.
So when E.T. arrives and he wants to be known to all the world,
we'll do a video
You do a
news
good
release.
job of it, right? Okay, fine. Do a video release of that. It's your pleasure to have his perceptions, Bill Dudor. We here on television, on Conversation, invite you to tune in again next week. We'll be coming back next week. I'm afraid that's it for this particular segment. We'll see you again next week. And Bill, once again, thanks very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Good night. We'll see you next week.
Beirut, Lebanon. WTN's 3 resident crews get the first sport coverage, beginning a more than 2-week marathon in 5 countries, delivering the drama and the newsmakers around the world. When the rest of the world leaves Beirut, our staff crews stay on, continuing the coverage of the horror that is Lebanon. Jadusa, South Africa. WTN cameraman Rapitse Moncho takes you into the heart of Black South Africa's unrest. The hard way. Our 3 crews there deliver the stark pictures of racial confrontation that dominates today's news. Auckland, New Zealand, halfway round the globe, the Greenpeace flagship Rainbow Warrior is sunk in a controversial sabotage mission, which reaches the highest echelons of the French government. WTN is there. Manchester, England, the world's 5th major air disaster in 3 months, and WTN's clients are showing the horrific scenes just hours after the story breaks. But the best news doesn't always have to be bad. Our features cassette service specializes in the wacky, offbeat story so ideally suited to tail-ending your show.